All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Spiritual Science as social activism and self-initiation here in the Loft for this talk on Between Death and Rebirth, the unseen side of reincarnation. And this is really the second part of a talk that began last time on getting clear on karma. And before we get started, I'd like to introduce the newest member to the Spiritual Science group here. None other than Bozo. Aha, yes, I'm sure everyone here recognizes Bozo. He's been around a long, long time. And I saw him just the other day in a store on College Street, and I had to have him. Why, you ask? Why do I need a Bozo in my place? He doesn't really go with the decor. Don't really have those colors here. And I don't really have a place for him. So when you come in, he just is like sticking out like a sore thumb. He's kind of like in the way. Every time I turn around, he's like right there looking at me, and I have to move him to get him out of the way. So why would I bring something like that into my loft?
Element of play.
Well, yes. Very good. An element of play. And why is that? I know you're all thinking, you know, the inner clown, the fool within, and so forth. But for me, within the esoteric symbolism of things, he represents what's sometimes known as the doppelganger, or the double in English. Doppelganger meaning double. And in that context, Bozo is the one that carries all of our past life karma. He is my accumulation of all my past deeds, thoughts, actions, right there. And he's right now just smiling very placidly, right? As the kind of that part of myself. But he doesn't like to be ignored. No. Bozo does not like to be ignored, because that smiling clown can turn into a frown. Because if I'm not paying attention to him, which is saying I'm not paying attention to all that unconscious part of myself, then he becomes what's known as the evil twin, or the evil clown. And in fact, when I first got him and I posted some photos on Facebook, people reacted to this with some fear and trepidation, because something about this seemingly innocuous smile has behind it something that's very portentous of evil and darkness and shadow aspects. So yes, I got him, and he sits right in the middle of the place, because as they say, better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. So you want to keep that part of yourself right in front, close. So in unpacking this marvelously large subject on karma and reincarnation, I keep being brought back to this as a central working mechanism of our spiritual development. And so with the next talk I was planning to give on Rupert Sheldrake's scientism and the assumptions of science, I'm going to postpone that for 2 weeks, and I'm going to add a third part to this series called Dealing with Your Dark Side Before You Die, and having fun doing it. So in 2 weeks, that will be part 3, where we will focus more on this aspect of the lower guardian of the threshold, as Rudolf Steiner speaks of it in his work, who is there in contrast to the greater guardian of the threshold. And I brought this up a few weeks ago. I'll just quickly recap that, because this is a very important what you could say, Rosicrucian concept that is often glossed over in New Age philosophy, such as the documentary that came out a few years ago called The Secret. Anybody see this documentary called The Secret? I call it The Supposed Secret because it's saying that you can have whatever you want, you can manifest whatever you want, you just create your own reality, you just have to do exercises to imagine it and go for it and manifest it. What you dream you can have, and what you don't believe in won't exist, and things like that, which are a real trip up for people that are sincerely seeking to live a life of value. And there was quite a backlash after that came out because people were saying this doesn't work. It's just too superficial, and the reason being is because it is skipping over a very important part of the mechanism of manifesting our divine nature, which is not here just to manifest its desires. If you're here to just manifest your desires, that could get you in a lot of trouble. Where are those desires coming from? And what is the process of refining those desires into something that's not just earthbound, but is actually going to give leverage to our spiritual development? So, as the lower guardian of the threshold, he stands there between ourselves and what we view and envision off in the distance. The great light off in the distance being the greater guardian of the threshold, our higher self, if you will, who says, this is the life, your destiny, this is where the path can lead. And you want that, the nirvana, the bliss, the heaven on earth. But as you move towards that, boing, Bozo springs up and says, I am the toll keeper. You cannot pass until you pay the toll. And the paying of the toll is the balancing of your karma. It is embracing that part with consciousness, learning about all of your past, taking it alchemically and turning it into something of a higher nature, which becomes you, and then moving into that integration with the greater guardian of the threshold, who stands beyond the threshold. So, we'll get more into him in 2 weeks, and just doing a little recap of what we did in the past one about karma. It was mostly focused on the subject of karma. And, well, just to continue that theme about how we deal with our karma, because there is a lot of New Age ideas out there. I came across something on the internet recently, these modalities for healing and dealing with our karma. And this is a quote from a website saying, Akashic records are etheric records of all your deeds throughout your past lives. Imagine an opportunity where you are able to go into the Akashic records and erase the bad karmas of your past lives. Or even just the bad karmas, addictions, or negative thinking patterns of this lifetime, and be able to replace those with grace of God's light, love, or divine truth. In one exercise, you can clear or release what might otherwise take decades of therapy. Imagine that, one exercise to clear your karma. And I wonder if it involves smudge.
And a credit card.
Smudge and a credit card. I'm sorry, but, buyers beware. That's what I call New Age ease. That it all can come easy, a quick fix. To me, karma is something that's cleared or released. Karma means action. You created it through action, so you have to uncreate it or build on it with further action, more enlightened action. And the whole point is enlightenment, that you learn the lesson that that karma is creating, and that you prove it, you establish it within the physical realm through your deeds in order to become a higher being. It's not something we want to get rid of. And it says here it would otherwise take decades of therapy. Well, life is decades of therapy. That's why we're here. In this very concretized realm of things, where these big spirits that have been put into these little tight shoe boxes, and it takes a lot of will to get things done. It takes a lot of will to establish something new within yourself. You really have to want it. So to think you can just wave a magic smudge stick and it goes, and you can repattern yourself or have somebody else repattern you for you, is just another one of the half-truths and lies that are perpetrated by dark beings that capitalize on naivety and ignorance and so forth. So, back to this idea of karma. When we're dealing with karma, the first thing is, it's not something to be feared. And I always think about episodes in the biblical texts when angels appeared to human beings. The first thing out of their mouths was, "Fear not."
Yeah, it's true.
Fear not. Don't have to be afraid of the divine will, which is really what the workings of karma is. And last time we talked about how that divine will, the divine laws, if you will, are seen within cultural history as religious laws that still exist with us these days through different religions. But it's really not a law per se. So that's one of the reasons why you don't have to think of it fearfully. It's not this hard and fast law. Yes, there are things about karma that have to be adhered to, but I like it when I read in places where it's called the workings of karma. That karma is not a mechanical thing. Karma, as with everything in our experience of physical phenomenon and spiritual phenomenon and all that, is made up of spiritual beings. Right? Everything is made up of spiritual beings. And this is so important to live with that as a concept, a living concept in your perception of life, that everything's made up of spiritual beings, including the workings of karma. Wise, benevolent spiritual beings. So when you're running into your karma, or you're running into your bozo, there's wisdom there. There's living wisdom there. And the workings of karma is as unique as the number of people in this room. Because we're all unique, and we're all going to have a unique relationship to the working of the wisdom of the universe. So fear not. Fear not. It is not something we need to run from. But as Rudolf Steiner says, as we live in our physical body, so we live in our karma. And we come into this shoebox of a body to give ourselves limitations, to give ourselves form, to wrestle with, to have to overcome its obstacles and hindrances. Likewise, the karma is something we wear, like a body, and it has limitations. And the more we develop our karmic consciousness, and become aware of what are the limitations, then the more efficaciously we can use them in this current life to develop ourselves. And we're going to start to characterize karma as we go, because there's many different aspects of karma. If you think of it in terms of your physical body and what it is as a representation of your karma, which is called biological karma. You know, you have either a male body or a female body. So there's gender karma, right? And of course we know there's always anomalies within that. There's people that are born with bodies that are maybe not so clear-cut. We won't get into those sorts of things tonight. We'll stay more with kind of a simpler approach, just to say, yeah, there's gender karma, and you were born as a male or female in the 21st century, and there's cultural karma around genders. There's a lot going on out there in our culture around genders. Yeah, it does take us more into looking at non-gender even. People that don't identify with their gender, which is pretty cool in some ways, because when we go to the different levels of karma, we realize it's not just biological karma, but there's the psycho-spiritual aspect as well, which has gender in a different kind of way. I remember Marianne, who is another spiritual scientist in our midst here. Haven't seen her in a couple of years, just showed up tonight, and she was the one who really went on about this with me about, well, you know, you've got a physical body that's male, your etheric body is female. And then your astral body, it's got the capacities of both male and female. And then the next level, your spirit, has neither.
And you can say, the one on top says, couldn't you get along down there with each other?
Exactly, yes. What's your problem, this male-female thing? I don't have that issue up here. Yeah, exactly. But you see, the bozo, you know, and there's a bozo in the sky, you know, that's also stirring up the pot of things. Says, let's split them into male and female. And that's what happened back in the pre-Atlantean time in Lemuria. That's when there was a division into sexes. We weren't always split into male and female. Like, this is back long time ago. We weren't anything like in this form. It might be hard to imagine that we didn't always look this way, but it's also kind of hard to imagine that we always look this way. There was a time when we didn't have gender, and there was a time when we actually didn't even incarnate into a physical body. And if you will, that is all laid out in the ancient legends found in the early books. The first book of the Bible, Book of Genesis, talks about, you know, how God created the human and in His image. Of course, I don't like to use the word "His" because then that implies that God has a gender. So maybe we just have to call God Bozo. All right, so Bozo created.
Bozo's God.
Yeah. Well, you know, we could spend a whole evening talking about that. We were made in the image of Bozo.
Yes.
And then we were put to sleep, and a rib was taken from Bozo, which created, you know, another Bozo. One was male, one was female, right? And that was in the Lemurian period. And then there was this fall that took place, the fall from paradise, and that is when the spirit of the human first began to enter into the physical bodies that had evolved on the earth, kind of a la the Darwinian model. To come into a physical body, to come into a gender, to work on the development of the spirit. So there was this need to have the physical realm in order to develop spiritual development. And that's a main principle to understand, that to evolve your spirit, you need the physical world. So any of these New Age teachings, or even the ancient teachings that had a bit more of an aversion to engagement in the physical world. They're a bit of the old paradigm, because it's been a shift that now we need to go deeper into matter to transform it and thereby transform ourselves. And we need to go into our karma. We meet ourselves, we meet our karma every time we turn around and there's another bozo there just smiling at us and going, oh, where do you think you're going? So, is there bad and good karma? You hear people talk about bad karma. Well, yes and no. It's a bit of a paradox that you need to contemplate a bit, because all of nature is seeking to grow and find balance. So it's always kind of out of balance, seeking balance. And that is what this process of reincarnation is. It's like you go into a male incarnation, you go into a female incarnation, you go into a rich incarnation, you go into a poor incarnation, and so on and so forth. So you're always kind of off the whole, you're off the center in the lives, and thereby you're creating a certain kind of action because of the disposition you have of whatever the character of that incarnation is. And so in the next incarnation, you want to swing the other way. So you have something that could be the opposite. You might have been a great mathematician in one incarnation. Does that mean you're going to be a great mathematician? You're going to choose circumstances to be a great mathematician? Probably not, because that would take you further out of balance. You're probably going to be a great musician in the next incarnation, because you've been very left brain, now you go very right brain, as it were. So when we talk about karma, we're talking about the law of compensation. The law of compensation, which it could be considered a law of physics, within a closed energy system. But we're not talking about physical things, we're talking about the moral life. Our moral life. There is this law of compensation at work. And so karma is the wise guide. The wise guide. This guy, he doesn't look wise, but he's very wise. That's why they call it foolish wisdom in the Bible. They call it the clown of God. I've seen a bumper sticker that says, clownliness is next to godliness. Something about that. The clown knows, the jester knows, and the jester often has more ability to speak the truth than the king does. This is like the inside of your king, if you will. When you turn Bozo inside out and find out what he's all about, you're going to find your divine shining being. So, when it comes to karma, some people, there's this term, tabula rasa. Anybody know what tabula rasa?
Slate.
Empty slate.
Right.
Empty slate.
Empty slate, blank slate, tabula, as in tabular, like there's nothing on the books. The bookkeeping is just all clean. Which is to say that you're not born with any mental content. You're not born with any content or knowledge when you arrive. This is in contrast to innatism, which is the philosophy that says, oh no, you do come already with certain predispositions and possession of a certain kind of knowledge. When we talk about reincarnation, it is definitely about bringing all sorts of stuff from the past. You already have knowledge. You already have something that you owe on the books as well. You have strengths and you have weaknesses. And I just want to take a moment to look at this concept of original sin, which is kind of a controversial thing. Like original sin doesn't really. I remember talking about this with somebody, and they said, well, how can you say that sweet little innocent baby lying there on the change table has sinned, that it's committed some sin? And of course, this is the Catholic doctrine that says, yeah, when you come into the world, like being a sweet little baby or not, you're carrying the sin that originated back way, way, way up the lineage to the original humans or Adam and Eve or whatnot. And so the default is that you have guilt, you have blood on your hands, and that has to be paid for in some way. Now, unfortunately, the Catholic Church doesn't really postulate the idea of reincarnation. Although if you dig a little bit deeper and you look into the mystical traditions like the Rosicrucian stream, which got pushed underground by the institutionalized church, you'll find that reincarnation is there as it is within most, if not all, mystical traditions of all time. But if they did believe in reincarnation, they wouldn't have to have this concept of original sin. They would just say, oh yeah, everybody's got karma. Even that sweet little baby on the table has got karma, because that sweet little baby is going to turn into an adult, and boom, you're going to see it's got a bozo, just like everybody else. And of course, they're going to say bozo is the carrier, the doppelganger that brings all of your past karmic deeds, thoughts, and feelings into this incarnation, albeit unconsciously, until you make it conscious. And it makes me realize how much in my spiritual striving and bungling and stumbling along, I have actually endeavored to discover more of my past lives and spiritual knowledge and wisdom and things like that, but have not followed through successfully. And that's why I feel a lot of restraint and things in my body that are feels like out of balance or a tightness, and that's why you know things like Reiki is great, but running for massage or body work or energy work is not. It might help be a kind of a band-aid solution to the pains that you feel, but a lot of it is just past life stuff that's right there waiting to be addressed, and nothing's gonna shift that pain and that blockage until you do the conscious work in unpacking it. But types of karma, we talked about that a little bit, types of karma. And in some ways you could think of it as the 3 tiers of your birthday cake. Your birthday cake, right? The day you're born, there's 3 tiers. And the first one is the physical. You've got this biological karma, which, when we talk about the body, we're really talking about the physical and your etheric body. You're born into the world and you have the physical body, and then you're immediately engendering this etheric body. And some of that is inherited traits. You've got physical traits that come from your blood lineage, and then you also have traits that you inherit energetically through the lineage, be it your race, ethnicity, and so forth. All the things that make up the bodily nature of your being, which of course will have certain imbalances and predispositions towards illnesses of one kind or another, which can be a manifestation of your karma. And then the second layer of the birthday cake is the psychosocial karma, right? So these are things that you absorb into you could say, from the astral environment, through your upbringing, through your education, through your socialization, through whatever gender that you have. Family, religion. You might call it clan karma. And this goes into the shaping of your personality. Your personality is psychology. But of course, your personality is not you. Your personality is just a costume you're wearing for this incarnation. The personality you have now is probably quite different than the personality you had in your previous life, and the life before that, and so on. The third level is getting closer to the you of you, and that could be referred to as biographical karma, which is your unique karma of your biography as an emerging I am spiritual being. So that's, just kind of a simple way to break down the different layers of yourself, the biological, the psychosocial, and then the biographical karma of the self. So you can start to look at what you got in the hand of cards you've been dealt. What have you got physically? What have you got in your social makeup? And then in terms of the biographical karma, what are the things that have happened to you? What are the things that come from the outside that are unique to your experience, that have information in them, such as those events that you take into the exercise? And of course, one needs to make a mention to the contribution of the cosmos, you might say the astrological aspect of karma, that we all come in through a particular house of the zodiac that shapes us in a particular way. Each house of the zodiac has certain attributes that contribute to our makeup. That would be a whole subject in itself, but it also points to the timing, that when we come in with a certain configuration of planets, you could say we chose that particular timing because we wanted certain conditions in the environment, certain cultural, historical conditions that give us external influences to which we can bring forth inner responses. We need something to work with, something to push against, because just to wrap this up before our break, it really boils down to the tension of two things. You've got your earthly necessities as being, a physical being within a particular family and particular obligations and all the things about being alive on earth, the earthly necessities, and then there's the karmic necessities, the things that are unique to you that will be pulling you in a particular destination or destiny, that pulls you also. And within the tension of the downward pull of earthly necessity and the upward pull of karmic necessity, you make choices in that space of freedom, and that's what makes you you. So we're now going to shift our focus more towards the aspects of reincarnation and how that works. And in this piece, talking about death, the great journey. And I get that title from this manual that came with a course I did from Clair Vision, a meditation school I began working with about a decade ago, as well as Sue. And this is one of the correspondence courses that anybody can obtain. And to me, this is one of the best things that's come out of Clair Vision. As you can see, it's quite a thick manual, so it covers virtually every aspect of death that you can think of. The myths around death, the mechanics of death, how to prepare for your death or help someone else to prepare for their death, because guess what? We're all going to die someday, right? So.
What?
Just kidding.
That's why I came tonight, so that I know you all, and I go first, and then when you come, I say, come on.
It even has information on how to take care of the dead once they're dead. And more people are wanting to take that power back from the system to be able to take care of their loved ones even after they've departed from the body. And they're probably quite thankful that you are loving and caring enough that you are tending to their body in a meaningful and sacred way. So there's information on that as well. So yeah, death, a great journey. And of course, first thing to say about death is that it's not just a momentary thing that happens in an instant and okay, that's it, that's death. Death happens in stages, just like life happens in stages. And a lot of this is actually quite logical. As we get into it, there is mystery about what is on the other side of the threshold, but now we've got this wonderful thing called intellect and scientific thinking that can be applied to understanding the stages of death. So even pre-death happens in stages. There is a gradual decline. We see that with the elderly. There's this decline, this slow heading towards the exit, which can be very beautiful. It can be a very beautiful aspect of life that has many opportunities for spiritual growth. Yes, indeed. The decline towards death actually opens up a lot of possibilities for spiritual development. So don't ever think that your spiritual life is declining with your physical life. No, it's just the opposite. Your spiritual life is increasing as your physical life declines. A lot of those spiritual powers are being freed up because the energy is not being utilized in physical existence. And you're already moving on to the other side of the threshold. Which is why I like to say to people when they're having a birthday and I wish them happy birthday on Facebook, I say, your greatest work always lies ahead. Your greatest work always lies ahead. Even to that moment of dying can be your greatest act if you prepare for it and you do it with consciousness. With consciousness. And in that sense, as that Course teaches, life is actually preparation for death. And it's not as morbid as it sounds, because the time we're going to spend on the other side of the threshold is a lot longer than the time we spend here. So there's something to look forward to in that. That, in a way, is more familiar territory than here is. Here is really a fraction of the time that we spend over there. And likewise, while I'm on that theme, what you bring into your body spatially is also just a fraction of who you are in your totality. So time and space here in this incarnation is just a fraction compared to what's on the other side. And when you think of it, even while you're here in your body, you spend about a third of your life not in your body while you're sleeping. Yeah, your astral body and your egoic self is out of your body on the other side of the threshold. Problem is that for the most part people aren't conscious of that. They don't have that conscious connection of what they're doing on the other side of the threshold while asleep. And that's partly where this work leads. And that's really where the future leads, is more and more to embrace the other side consciously. And I always like to come back to this the circle, which shows the totality of things. But now our experience is like a lemniscate, where it's twisted and divided in two. And we're living down on this side in the physical realm, and when we go to sleep we go up into the other side, and when we wake up we come back into the physical body and into our senses, and then we leave our senses and in the spiritual world, and this threshold in the middle cuts us off. Same with dying. When we die we go to the other side. So we're trying to actually diminish the top half. We're trying to make that part smaller. So we have more consciousness from this side as to what's on the other side. So eventually our consciousness is boom. We're conscious of both sides of the threshold simultaneously. And that's freedom, and that's what puts us more in control of our lives. So when it comes to this thing around reincarnation, as we said earlier, virtually all civilizations and cultures have had teachings around reincarnation and life after death. There's the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and all the tombs that were set up for the pharaohs, so that when they died, they had a space where they'd be able to leave from into the journey into the underworld, guided by the jackal-headed god Anubis. The Greeks had their Hades, the realm of the shades that people went to when they died. Tibetan Buddhism has the Book of the Dead, which is literature that's actually written for the dead. It's not for the living. It's called the Book of the Dead because it was written for them, and that's why reading for the so-called dead is a great tradition from the past that's also valuable in these times. And that's something that Rudolf Steiner encouraged people to do, was to find literature that had rich content that you could read to your loved ones. And then this, of course, goes back to Hinduism, which we still have today, and that's kind of the seminal teachings, the Vedic teachings that spoke of reincarnation and the workings of that. And if you want to go back even further, all of this mystery knowledge comes from the Atlantean teachings that predate our history. And as I said, there was a time even before Atlantis when we didn't have reincarnation. And there's a time in the not too distant future where we're not going to be reincarnating. We're going to come out of this phase of having to be in bodies and relying on this level of existence for our spiritual development. And then there's one text here I'd like to read that is kind of veiled language around reincarnation. The Emerald Tablet. Anyone who's familiar with alchemical texts would know the Emerald Tablet, which was ostensibly written by Hermes Trismegistos. Hermes is considered the Egyptian father of alchemy. And in this Emerald Tablet, it says, "It ascends from earth to heaven, and again descends from heaven, newborn on earth. It unites in itself the forces of the things above and the things below. And through this one thing, all the light and glory of the world shall be yours." So in this kind of veiled language, it's said to be speaking of reincarnation, of this ascending up and descending down, ascending up, and within that flux, all the things from above and below are gathered together, eventually amalgamating them back into wholeness. Which is why I put this little drawing here showing how life is like this wave, up and down. There's this ascending and this turning, this descending and turning, ascending and turning, so forth, and then the threshold that runs through the middle. And this biography chart, which I showed last time, from the book called The Human Life by George and Gisela O'Neill, is showing the human biography this parabola shape that descends and then turns and then ascends is just one part of this ongoing journey of repeated lives. So when we talk about death and the post-death stages, it's as I said, somewhat logical, because first is the death of the physical body, and we can see that. Science can see that, and they say, okay, person's dead, and the mortician comes and proclaims, yep, he's dead. But that's really just the beginning of the death process, because, as you know, in spiritual science, we have different levels. We have the physical body, which is made up of the mineral kingdom. We have the life body, or the ether body, or the pranic body, which is shared with the plant kingdom. And then we have the astral body, the sentient body, which is shared with the animal kingdom. And then we have the egoic self. And so each of these parts of our being goes through its own death process. So after the physical death, then there is this etheric death. The etheric body goes through what could be called an unraveling. And that can take anywhere from a few days to a few weeks. It's life energy. And that life energy, I like to think of it as kind of the kundalini becomes unsprung. Right? That energy that was in the physical body is released from the physical body. And the experience that the person has now that they're out of their physical body can be where they see their life as a tableau, or this one big picture. Because the etheric body, the life body, is the memory body, and it has all the imprints of your experiences over your life imprinted in it. And if you've read any anecdotes about people that have had near-death experiences, they see their whole life flash before their eyes. They see their whole life just in an instant before their mind's eye. Because there's this separation between the physical body and this life body. And so everything that's imprinted there, you see in an instant. And I had an experience close to that when I was down in the Amazon and I did some, oh my gosh, it's snowing outside. Okay. Welcome back, winter. When I was down in the Amazon and on my second night had quite a strong dose of the jungle brew of ayahuasca, and I had this flash of experiences within just really a few seconds that was so loaded with information. Memories I had never even thought of in my whole life were all of a sudden there. And it was startling, if not quite shocking. So anyways, that's the sort of thing that's happening after you have a physical death. There's this unraveling of all the imprints in this etheric body. So you see the whole life in this great expanding tableau. Later on comes the details. That's like the big picture. Later on in the great journey, the details come. Yes?
Well, I was just wondering, Jesse, if there's a complete detachment from the physical. Is that silver cord still there? Is the etheric aware of the physical world and people, or is there like a total shift?
It's a gradual thing. It can last, a few days or a few weeks. It's all unique to where you are in your development. There's no prescribed thing.
Are we aware of our loved ones?
Well, the word you use, aware, it really all depends on the awareness that you developed while you were alive in the physical body. the experience you're going to have after death really is dependent on the effort and the will you put into developing yourself spiritually, and as you said, your loved ones. What is the nature of the relationship? People that are more materialistically oriented, more focused on the earth while they're here, it's going to be quite a different experience than those who have already developed a relationship with the threshold, such as with these exercises we're doing. People can have a more difficult time detaching from the earth, detaching from their loved ones, not accepting that they're dead, being disoriented in this world that's completely foreign to them because they never gave it any attention. They weren't listening to Bozo.
Very much.
As on earth, so in the spiritual world. It's not that illogical when you you can think about it and kind of figure these things out yourself. And I'm just giving you the template of the stages. So we've gone through the first post-life stage of the etheric body unraveling. Then we get into the second stage. It's the astral body unraveling. And that takes place in an area called Kamaloka. And Kama means desire in Sanskrit, and Loka means location. So it's the location of desire. And of course, the astral body is the desire body. It's the sentient body. It's really your personality in a way. And you're not taking your personality with you, because you're going to get a different personality in the next life, thank God. And so you're going to want to let that go, right? So you go into this state of Kamaloka, and you experience the desires that you cultivated. And it's an unraveling, it's a letting go of those desires. So, within some spiritual systems they call it purgatory, a purging of the desires. And so if you were very materialistically minded, and all of your desire body was focused on material things that were not requited, they're unrequited, and then you go into the other world and you don't have your physical body, you've got a lot of unmet desires, you're going to have to be in kind of that soup for a while to let that stuff dissolve. It's like a place of a burning thirst that cannot be quenched. So again, now is the time to work with those aspects of your being, to orient yourself between earthly necessity and karmic necessity. Yeah, you do have a physical body that needs to be fed, and yeah, you do like to have nice, healthy food instead of junk food, so you use your desire body to guide you on this level, but you don't let those things dominate. You develop devotion out of desire for the higher things that are of a more eternal verity. The other thing about Kamaloka is that you also experience the things that you gave out to others. You experience it from their perspective. You're going to get back what you gave. So as they say, the words you use, make sure they're sweet, because someday you're going to eat them. The law of compensation, it's so great. It's so great that, in the final analysis, you get what you give. And with compound interest. So that state of Kamaloka, it lasts about a third of your lifetime, or the equivalent of the amount of time you spend asleep, right, which is a third of your lifetime. So if you died at age 60, it's 20 years. 20 years in Earth time in this place of Kamaloka. That's what's said of the ancient wisdom. And just a brief aside here, when we talk about desire, talk about platonic love. We misuse this word platonic love in our culture because we misunderstand what it really is. Today we say platonic love means I'm in a platonic relationship. We're not having sexual intimacy. But that is not the original meaning of platonic love. Plato was all about developing a love that extends beyond the physical realm, right? That we connect with the spirit that's behind the physical realm. That's platonic love, is to connect with the archetypes, to connect with the noetic realm that informs the physical realm. So I can actually be in a relationship with sexual intimacy, and it can still be platonic love, because I'm not loving just the person's body, I'm loving the person. I'm loving the spirit. And so when it comes to desire, we want platonic love. We want to have a desire to connect with the spiritual nature of things and not just a physical thing, as is the case with materialistically minded people. Yeah. So then the next stage, after you've released your astral nature, there's a dissolution of the astral body, because you're not going to have the same astral body in the next lifetime. You move into what's called Devakan. And Devakan means the place of the gods. Deva means gods, and Kan is place. This is beyond the astral plane. And there's two levels to Devakan. There's the lower Devakan and the upper Devakan. And the lower Devakan is also called the realm of the archetypes, where you're going through on this ascension beyond your life experience, beyond your desires, and you're experiencing the archetypes that you were drawn to. You're experiencing yourself after death. Really, this journey is about experiencing what you accumulated. So in the lower Devakan, you're connecting to the archetypes and the things that you attached yourself to. And it's somewhat of this, they talk about the judgment after death. In the Catholic terms, they talk about the day of judgment. This Devakan is really like weighing out. It's a weighing out. What did you attach yourself to? What did you give value to in your earthly existence? And then when you move beyond lower Devakan into the upper Devakan, you actually are now beginning to connect with the devas themselves, or the gods, or in the Rosicrucian vernacular, it's the spiritual hierarchies. You actually are in the realm of the spiritual beings that have worked to form and shape and develop us, and have infused their substance into us and our existence and everything on all planes of existence. So in that realm of upper Devakan, we're moving up through the spiritual hierarchies, and we're really stripped now down to our pure spirit. That's really all that's left at that point is the pure spirit. But the thing that's the catch around all that is, how much consciousness will you have as you send up into this highest point of the journey? Because there can be a dimming of consciousness. The ideal is that you maintain consciousness and you're in those rooms of the upper rooms of the mansion, if you will, with consciousness and in communion with those high beings. But if you haven't developed the capacity while you're down here in the valley, you're not going to have that consciousness. You're just going to be held by those beings that have been making us and shaping us. But it's like you're going to get there, and it's like you're going to be a spiritual baby that you're going to have to be taken care of. Babies don't really have consciousness, right? They haven't developed it yet. So that's what it can be like as we get to the top, which is called the midnight hour and the place of the midnight sun. It's the pinnacle and the last stage the last stage of death. And if we have developed consciousness while we're here on Earth, when we get to that place of the midnight sun, we're going to be able to look into the past with consciousness, and we're going to be able to look into our future with consciousness. You're actually going to be able to see future incarnations that are laid out kind of in a template form. So, again, it's all resting upon the capacities we develop while we're alive. And then comes the somewhere over the rainbow syndrome. I call it the somewhere over the rainbow syndrome because, as you know, Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, when she was in Kansas, she wanted to be somewhere over the rainbow, right? And then she got over the rainbow into Oz and she wanted to get back to Kansas, right? The grass is always greener on the other side. Likewise, you know, here we are in this realm, and like a lot of us would rather be somewhere else. A lot of, you know, this isn't necessarily, you know, a holiday picnic here, right? And some people don't even like the idea of reincarnation because it's like, I don't want to come back here. Like, this has got pain and suffering, and it's not a very nice place.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're yearning for somewhere over the rainbow. We're kind of looking forward to maybe when we get out of here. But what happens when you get to the midnight hour? Remember, it's still part of the same whole. So when you get up there, you actually yearn to reincarnate. There's actually a soul gravity that begins to draw you back down into another incarnation. Because you realize that's what it's all about. You put your right foot in, put your right foot out, you know, like you got to get back into another body and shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey, you do the hokey pokey, and that's what it's all about. Thank you, thank you. So I know it's hard to believe that you'd get way up there and you'd be able to see both directions, that you'd actually want to come down to a place like this. But you've gathered up a lot of momentum. It's like on a roller coaster. It's like, whoa, you're going to be able to just fly down. And so after this turning, you begin the descent into a rebirth. And just to kind of, you know, lay it out succinctly, again, it's logical. There's a gathering up and preparation of the bodies that you're going to need. The astral body, the personality, right? So you start looking at who you're going to incarnate with in a pod, so to speak, of other people that are lining up to incarnate. And then also the life body and then the physical body. And when we do incarnate, of course there is our heredity. And it's funny, you know, because in science they'll say, oh, you've got certain genetic traits that make you look like your ancestors. You know, you look like your grandfather and stuff like that. But the irony is it's the other way around, that you incarnated with people that are more like you. It's not that you look like them, it's they look like you. And that's why you chose them as your ancestral lineage in which to incarnate into. So as you're coming down, you're looking at an ancestral lineage that is most suitable to your karmic needs. Right? So your ancestry is kind of like the chassis on an assembly line at a car manufacturing plant. Kind of look, you go, oh, well, there's a make and model that best suits my karmic needs. And physically, genetically, they've been preparing the chassis as your karma car, you could call it. And that provides the physical foundation for your spiritual journey. So, this coming down and crossing the threshold into a new incarnation, we come back onto this chart here, this parabola. And just like death goes through stages, so does birth. There's not just one birth, but there's several births that take place. Of course, you cross a threshold into a physical body, you have a physical birth. And for the first phase, the first 7 years, it's this development of the physical body. That's the primary part that's developing. Your physical body will never grow more than it does in its first 7 years of life. Then, and so there you've got your biological karma built into your physical body. And then there's a big shift in consciousness at the end of the 7 years. There's a big shift physically, which is another descent. There's another descent. It's all about descent here, right? Your baby teeth fall out, and the head shifts, and there's a descent of your own etheric body down into your physical body. Up to that point, you're really feeding off the etheric envelope of your parents and of the family. You live off of their life forces. You know, starting with the breastfeeding. You're not only drawing milk, but you're drawing etheric life forces out of the mother's breast. You wean off that, and then the milk teeth come out, and you have this descent, this incarnation of your own etheric body, which got shaped up here when you were working with the spiritual hierarchy, setting up your game plan. Then at the end of that phase, age 14, there's another big physical shift, which is accompanied by a shift in consciousness. There's the physical development of your sexual apparatus, puberty. And that has, again, a shift in consciousness. So none of this is genetic. None of this is, is what science would say are genetic traits. This is something from the spiritual world able to descend into you as your chassis, your karma car, develops, and more parts of you can come on board. So there's this descent happening, and it takes a full 21 years for this development of your bodies. Descending, and then in life, there's this turning. And then another ascent takes place. And it's interesting, from when I taught in the Waldorf schools, the curriculum in the Waldorf school is amazing because it recognizes that you're an incarnating being that has had past life experiences. So the curriculum is designed to allow you to unpack your karmic past. In fact, they're getting you doing karmic work in the classroom. Not directly, but they take you to ancient Egypt. They take you to ancient Persia. They take you to ancient India. You learn the songs. You learn the customs. You live in that atmosphere within your consciousness as you go through the grades in the grade school of Waldorf. And that's as you're descending, and then you begin your adulthood. You could call this the body period, and then this middle period is the soul period, and then this third part of life is the spirit period. And you'll see that there's this color shading because there's a mirroring that goes on. What took place here in the descent on the other side of the threshold is going to get mirrored here in the first in the body phase, the 21 years. So you look at your life. You can now go back and look at your entrance into this world in that first 21 years and go, okay, what was my biological karma? What was my psychosocial karma? And what was my spiritual karma, my biographical karma? What were the things that were unique to me as a spiritual being? And you sit with that meditatively and contemplatively through the karma exercise that we're going to talk about in a second here, and start to extract the essential information from that. Likewise, what happened in the body phase here is also mirrored over here. If you're able to interpret the hand of cards that was dealt you here, you're going to be able to play them better later in life. As I said, your greatest work always lies ahead, and your spiritual work is predominantly in this part of your life. So, yeah, you learn what are the cards you've been dealt and how to play them best, so that when you cross the threshold, the great journey of death is going to be even greater.